You know how it is, right? A brilliant new software update rolls out at the office, and then nobody uses it. We've all seen it happen. Well, today we're diving into a really fascinating paper that tackles that exact same puzzle, but in a field where it's way more critical: healthcare. It's all about understanding why great ideas fail and introduces a powerful new tool called the OTIS Framework.
It really all comes down to this one big question. Why do great, proven ideas fail to stick? I mean, we're talking about life-saving medical procedures or new safety protocols, so why do they so often struggle to get adopted and used consistently out in the real world where they can actually help people?
Well, a key insight from the research is that we're often just looking in the wrong place for the answer. This quote here really nails it. It says that a lot of the time, an individual provider's behavior is limited by things that are totally outside of their control. So it's not about blaming the doctor or the nurse.
And that brings us right to the heart of the implementation problem. The real issue is that when a new practice doesn't get picked up, our gut reaction is to look at the people involved. But the problem is usually so much bigger than that.
Think of it like this. The tools we've been using to understand this stuff, frameworks like CFIRE or EPIS, they mostly focus on individuals and teams. It's kind of like trying to figure out what's wrong with a car's engine by only checking the tire pressure. They're not useless, but they completely miss the deeper organizational stuff, things like power dynamics, internal politics, or even pressure from other hospitals in the market.
And what's so interesting is that this oversight can lead to a specific kind of mistake that researchers call omitted variable bias. It sounds technical, but it's a simple idea. You end up blaming the wrong thing because the real cause was something you weren't even looking at. You might blame a doctor's motivation when the actual problem is some clunky, outdated hospital policy.
So this is where a new, much more powerful tool comes into the picture. To really see what's going on, we need a better lens, one that's actually designed to see that bigger, more complex organizational landscape.
And that new tool is called OTIS. So instead of that small toolbox for checking tire pressure, OTIS is like a full, multi-drawer mechanics toolkit. It was built by pulling together insights from 9 different, well-established theories about how organizations work. It gives us a much more complete view.
So OTIS stands for Organization Theory for Implementation Science, and its goal is super practical: to take all this complex academic research about how organizations really function and turn it into something that people on the ground can actually use to make change happen.
So you might be wondering, how did they even build a tool this comprehensive? Well, the story behind it is pretty fascinating. It wasn't just a couple of people brainstorming. It was this really rigorous process of taking a whole lot of complexity and boiling it down to something clear. It was basically a 2-step process. First, they brought in 24 experts and had them sort 70 core ideas from organization theory into groups that made sense to them. It's like a massive high-stakes card sorting game. Then, a second group of 18 people took those results, talked it all through, debated it, and slowly refined everything until they all agreed on one final clear framework.
And this is a peek at what they started with. These are called concept maps. Now, it looks a little messy, I know, but each number is a different organizational concept. What you're seeing is a visual representation of how all these different ideas relate to each other in the experts' minds. Their job was to take this beautiful mess and find the simple, elegant structure hiding inside. And the result of all that sorting and mapping and debating, they did it. They managed to distill all that complexity into one single, powerful framework built around 6 core domains. They basically created a clear map for a very complex territory.
All right, so let's pop the hood and actually take a look at this new toolkit. We're going to take a quick tour of the 6 key areas that OTIS helps us understand inside any organization. The first 2 domains really cover the basics. Organizational characteristics is like the organization's DNA. Its age, its size, whether its culture is open to change. Then you've got governance and operations, which is the internal rule book. And that includes the official, written down policies, but also all those unwritten rules about how things really get done around here. Next, the framework zooms way out to look at the characteristics of a population of organizations. So this isn't just about one hospital, it's about the whole ecosystem it lives in. How tough is the competition? Are resources hard to come by? Then it zooms right back into tasks and processes, which gets into the nitty-gritty of the actual work being done. Is it simple? Is it complex? And finally, the last 2 domains are all about information and connections.
Knowledge and learning is about how an organization thinks. How does it get new info? How does it make sense of the world? And interorganizational relationships maps out that whole web of connections it has with other institutions. A web that's all about power, who depends on whom, and outside pressures.
So, okay, we've got this really smart new model with 6 clear parts. But the real question is, so what? What does this actually let us do? Why could this be a real game changer?
Well, what makes OTIS so different is that it gets into the how and the why. It doesn't just give you a checklist of things to look at. It helps explain the mechanisms behind why things succeed or fail. And that gives people a much clearer roadmap for picking the right strategies for change, because it connects them back to these really solid, established theories about how organizations actually behave.
And look, this isn't just some theory sitting in a journal. The OTIS framework is already out there being put to work on major projects. People are using it to understand what's happening in community cancer centers, to figure out how to improve sensitive data collection, and even to tackle tough issues like health inequities for cancer survivors. It's being tested in the real world as we speak. And that really brings us to a final, powerful thought. At the end of the day, the next great cure is completely useless if it just stays stuck in a lab. So, could it be that a deep understanding of the organization, that messy, complex human system, is the final, critical piece of the puzzle for putting science into practice where it can actually save lives?